Hello, you're listening to The Olive Tree with me, Julia Fisher, and my guest, Shirya Yahav, who lives in a village close to the Sea of Galilee in northern Israel. Last week, we heard how Shirya and Daniel were married, and the time came for Daniel to leave the army and find a job. Being strong believers, they prayed and fasted, and Daniel was offered a job with Galtronics, a high-tech company in Tiberias. However, they both knew that wouldn't be forever, as Shirya now explains.
The company was growing, and alongside the fellowship was growing, because people that worked in the company, some believers also came to the fellowship. People from the fellowship could have worked in the company, so it kind of helped each other. There were also other people working, not only from the fellowship. But the fellowship was slowly growing, and we saw the need for a pastor, for someone to have full time. And then one morning, Daniel felt that God told him, leave your position and become a pastor. I'm making things short here. He has much more detailed story, but it would take much more time. And the amazing thing was that Ken Kroll, who was the owner, a few days later came to him with the same suggestion. He said, would you take maybe, I don't remember, it was first 1 year or 3 years, a leave from the company and become a pastor, and then we'll see what happens. So for him, it was like, wow, it comes from his direction too, because he wouldn't imagine that Ken would agree to something like this, It wasn't good for the company. And so that's what we did. But when Daniel's father heard about it, he was very angry. For him leaving a position of a manager of a company, becoming a pastor, he was not a believer. He didn't like him being a believer. He had kind of accepted it at that time, but suffered it, I would say. Quietly suffered it. But now this, that was too much. And he just slammed the phone to him and didn't want to hear about him anything. But Daniel left his position, became a pastor. 1 year passed, 2 years, 3 years, and till today.
So you've worked alongside Daniel. Your family was growing at the same time, so you had demands there. But you have been very much the help that he needed, haven't you? You've helped to build this congregation as well. What has been your role? How did you find yourself fitting in?
Well, I'm supporting him. That's my role. We work together. We are as a team, And God gave me the peace, always on these junctions to say that. I had the peace to do that, and God has kept us and blessed us, I see myself as supporting him. I stayed home with the kids. I wouldn't imagine to send them to some daycare, my little babies or children, to school. They went to public school here in the village, or younger, first children, I would say. After that, we had also a school from the fellowship, So my last kids, I would say, 3 youngest went to the fellowship school, but the first ones went to public school. Anyway, I stayed home, and actually from the beginning of the fellowship, very beginning, I saw the need of something, for the children in the fellowship. And I just started doing that, There is a need, just pick it up. I was 20, almost 20 before 20. I think I was 19 even when I started just something to do with the children, as a home group, before we were really a fellowship. And it grew from there. And 2003, in our fellowship building today, I saw the need for more Hebrew, Bible-based, I would say, in the Israeli context, more based on just the Bible and not kind of different flavors, to have material for the children. So I started writing our own material for the fellowship, for the children, for the different age groups, 3 to 4, 5 to 7, 7 and up, 3 different groups. And took about 12 years to write that. So I was doing that along with my work at home and supporting him for anything else, whatever he needs, secretary, writing letters, this and that, helping him sometimes with the computer a little bit.
And during those years, you have actually faced quite a lot of opposition. You're based here up in the north in Tiberias. It hasn't always been a walk in the park, has it?
Yeah, especially in the first years. In the first years, when we were married, after 2 years, we moved to Tiberias, to the building where was first rented for the fellowship. Actually, there we formed as a fellowship, from a home group to a fellowship. We were there 1 year, and then one Saturday we heard yelling and whatever, banging on the big windows. It was a very old hotel that we rented, and a religious group, that had been going by and somehow realized who we are, what we're doing, heard us singing there, came and started yelling and banging and throwing rocks inside, breaking the windows. Rocks were flying on the head of the people inside. Took quite a while until the police came. That happened for several weeks. At the time, we lived in that old hotel, in the upstairs, in 2 rooms, which were stinking because it was so old, furniture and everything, not nice. It's Tiberias, so we could keep the windows pretty much open. Very hot, no air conditioner. But the owner wanted someone to keep the place and be there, and we had no home, no house for ourselves. So I said, okay, we'll live there. We'll take care of the place. So we did for that 1 year. But then they started doing this harassment every Saturday for about a month. And it was just before Christmas, December, God kind of put it on our hearts, leave the place. We would fix the windows during the week. They would break them on Saturday, fix them again. And so God said, just leave the place. So we left. We didn't have many things there. And we had a piano. That was our biggest possession that someone had contributed. We took the piano out. Day or two later, they set the place in fire. But they didn't know that we had just left the place. So the old furniture and everything burned there. And we became a homeless fellowship. We were on the hillsides until we settled on a hill over Tiberias. But for the first year, we went every time another place. We looked, where should we have a fellowship today, And people learned to care for each other, give a ride for those who didn't have a car. And we would meet all around the Kinneret, the lake. And then we settled in a place, which became our permanent fellowship place over Tiberias.
Let's talk about what happens there week by week now, because you're a large fellowship for Israel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have every Shabbat around maybe 300 people more or less coming, and we have about 500 people all together with children. Not everybody comes.
And in Israel standards, that is a lot of people in a congregation.
Mm-hmm. They say so. They say so.
So you have grown and established yourself. So just tell me about the people who come.
Well, a mixture. Israelis. Today, we already have a second generation, Our children grew up. Other children that were born in the fellowship, are grown up and they are serving. We have new immigrants, and we have families that their children, they are new immigrants, but their children are Israeli, born and grown here. So it's really a big mixture. We have Ethiopian, several sisters. We have a Druze family.
A lot of Russians?
Yeah, from Russian background. Yeah.
Ukrainians?
Yes. Yeah, only I'm finding out, for me, they were all Russians, Only today I found out that Ukrainians are not Russians.
So, Shirya, if I was to ask you, what you have seen God doing, what he is doing, and what you anticipate for the future, what would you say? Because Israel as a nation is surrounded by troubles from the outside. It's also very challenging living here. It's not an easy place to live. What are you expecting to see God doing in the coming months and years?
Well, first, if I look back, if my grandfather would come here today and see the fellowship, I think he would think that it's I don't know, even no words, it's a miracle. As I said, I grew up, there was no fellowship, no children, no friends, no nothing. Today we have a fellowship with kids class, many kids, youth group, young adult groups, I tell them sometimes, you have no idea, how good life you have, how many friends you have. And actually for grandfather, when he met Daniel first time, for him, he was like one of those people he saw in his vision with a white robe, an Israeli young believer that came to life, from these dry bones. He loved him very much, grandfather, yeah. It's a miracle where we are living in a miracle. We don't realize it. But if we could go fast back and fast forward, it would be a wow. So what I think, it's going to grow. I mean, God has promised. At the end, all Israel will come to believe. And it's a process, They don't come in one day. And God doesn't do things in one day, Even the Red Sea, if you read, we have the image that it opened, poof, at one time. But it says in the Bible, God brought a hot wind all night. And they're standing there and they're waiting, and this hot wind is blowing, You have to wait. It doesn't go in one instance. And I see it, God is doing things in a process. He works to bring people to Him. And today we have so many young people. They're in the army, they're in the universities, they're everywhere. And many people have friends that are believers. So they hear, seeds are being sown. So I see more people coming to faith and coming more and more and more. It's, how you say this word, exponential,
Shira, thank you. You've been listening to Shirya Yahav sharing her unique and honest story. The Olive Tree Reconciliation Fund is a Christian charity based in the UK that supports the needs of both Jewish believers and Arab or Palestinian Christians living in Israel and the wider Middle East. If you'd like to know more about our work and receive our free bi-monthly newsletter, please visit our website, olivetreefund.org. Meanwhile, join me at the same time next week for another story from the Olive Tree. Until then, goodbye.